Sister Act arrived in May 1992 and became one of the surprise hits of that entire year, turning a Las Vegas lounge singer hiding in a San Francisco convent into a premise that somehow worked completely because of the people assembled to inhabit it. 34 years later, the cast tells stories that are warm, unexpected, and in several cases, final. Here is where they all ended up. Number 1. Maggie Smith as Mother Superior, the formidable iron-willed head of the convent, whose absolute certainty about how things should be done made every scene she shared with Whoopi Goldberg feel like a negotiation neither woman was prepared to lose. 57 years old during production, she brought 2 Academy Awards and decades of stage and screen mastery to a role that required someone capable of holding comic ground against one of the most naturally charismatic performers in the business without ever flinching. Her personal life moved through 2 marriages. A first marriage to actor Robert Stevens from 1967 to 1975 produced 2 sons, Toby Stevens and Chris Larkin, both of whom went into acting. She later married playwright Beverly Cross in 1975 and remained with him until his death in 1998. The decades following Sister Act brought Harry Potter's Professor McGonagall, Downton Abbey's Violet Crawley, and a career acceleration that made her final years among her most widely seen. Maggie Smith passed away on September 27, 2024, at 89 years old, closing out one of the most consistently distinguished careers in the history of English language performance. Number 2. Harvey Keitel as Vince LaRocca, the cold, calculating gangster whose pursuit of Deloris gives the film its stakes, and whose presence ensured the comedy always had something genuinely dangerous underneath it. 52 years old during production, he arrived carrying a filmography built alongside Martin Scorsese from Mean Streets through Taxi Driver that had established him as one of the most committed, dramatic actors of his generation. He is 87 today. His relationship with actress Lorraine Bracco produced a daughter, Stella, before ending in the early 1990s, and he later had a son, Roman, with actress Daphne Kastner, a relationship that also ran its course across the same decade. The career surrounding Sister Act continued at full pace throughout the 1990s, with Reservoir Dogs, Bad Lieutenant, Pulp Fiction, and The Piano all arriving within 2 years of this film and collectively representing one of the more remarkable concentrated stretches of work any actor produced during that entire decade. He has remained selectively active in film and television across the years since, a presence the industry has never quite been able to do without entirely. Number 3. Kathy Najimy as Mary Patrick, the enthusiastically devoted, infectiously energetic nun whose wholehearted embrace of everything Deloris brought to the convent gave the film some of its most purely joyful moments across the entire running time. 35 years old during production, she is 69 today. The warmth and comic commitment she brought to Mary Patrick reflected a performer who had been developing her voice in comedy and theater for years before this role introduced her to the widest possible mainstream audience. She married Dan Finnerty in 1995, and they have a daughter named Samia, a family life built steadily alongside a career that has never stopped moving. Her voice work as Peggy Hill across 13 seasons of King of the Hill became one of the most sustained character commitments of her career, and the 2022 release of Hocus Pocus 2 brought her back to another beloved role from the same early 1990s period that Sister Act occupied. She has been a consistent and vocal advocate for LGBTQ+ rights across decades, work she has treated as inseparable from rather than secondary to everything else she does professionally. Number 4. Bill Nunns as Eddie Souther, the detective assigned to keep Deloris safe, whose combination of protective instinct and genuine bewilderment at his surroundings gave the film a warm comic thread running alongside the convent storyline throughout. 39 years old during production, he brought a physicality and ease to the role that came from years of serious dramatic work, most recognizably as Radio Raheem's in Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing 3 years earlier, a performance so indelible that it preceded him into every room he walked into professionally for the rest of his career. He was married to Donna Nunn and remained deeply connected to his hometown of Pittsburgh throughout his life, a geographical loyalty that ran alongside the Hollywood work rather than being replaced by it. His later career included a long run as Robbie Robertson across multiple Spider-Man films, a franchise role that introduced him to a generation of moviegoers who may not have connected him back to a San Francisco convent or a Brooklyn street corner. Bill Nunn passed away on September 24, 2016, at 63 years old after a battle with leukemia. Number 5. Mary Wicks as Mary Lazarus, the sharp, dry-witted elder nun whose comic timing made every scene she occupied feel like it was being run by someone who had been doing this since before most of the cast was born, which was not entirely inaccurate. She was in her early 80s during production, arriving on set with a Hollywood career that stretched back to the 1930s and included The Man Who Came to Dinner and White Christmas among its most recognizable stops along the way. She never married and had no children, a life built entirely around the craft she had been practicing for more than 5 decades by the time Deloris Van Cartier walked through the convent doors. The role brought her to a new generation of audiences who found her timing as sharp as any performer for on screen, regardless of age, and she returned for Sister Act 2 before her health began to decline. Mary Wickes passed away on October 22, 1995, at 85 years old, just 3 years after the film that gave her one of her final and most warmly received performances. Number 6, Joseph Mahar as Bishop O'Hara, the dignified, easily flustered church official, whose visits to the convent consistently confirmed that no level of ecclesiastical authority fully prepares a person for what Deloris brings into any room she enters. Born in Ennis, County Clare, Ireland, he was 58 during production and carried extensive stage credentials across Broadway and regional theater that gave his screen work a contained authority most character actors spend entire careers trying to manufacture. The brief scenes he occupies in the film land precisely because he plays the bishop's discomfort with complete seriousness, never winking at the audience, which is exactly the right choice for a comedy that works best when everyone around the chaos treats it as entirely real. His career continued steadily in theater and television through the 1990s until his health declined in his final years. Joseph Mahar passed away on July 17, 1998, at 64 years old, leaving behind a body of stage work that those who saw it consistently described as among the finest of his generation. Number 7, Wendy McKenna as Mary Robert, the shy, breathtakingly beautiful young nun whose hidden singing voice becomes one of the film's most genuinely surprising reveals, and whose gradual blossoming under Deloris's influence gives the convent storyline its most satisfying emotional arc. 33 years old during production, she is 67 today. The role required a performer capable of conveying deep reserve and then releasing it completely at exactly the right moment, a technical demand that McKenna met with a precision that made the transformation feel entirely earned rather than convenient. She returned for Sister Act 2 and continued working across film and television in the years that followed, with a memorable appearance in the family film Air Bud among her subsequent credits. Her personal life has stayed largely out of the public conversation across the decades since the film came out, a quiet distance from the spotlight that the role itself suggested she understood better than most. She has continued to work selectively in theater and television, a career built on craft rather than profile that reflects the same understated quality she brought to Mary Robert more than 30 years ago. Number 8, Richard Portnow as Willie, the stone-faced enforcer, whose presence in the film's opening scenes establishes with complete efficiency exactly how much danger Deloris is actually in, and why the convent is the only place desperate enough to take her. 44 years old during production, he is 78 today. The career surrounding Sister Act belongs to a performer who understood early that durability in Hollywood comes from being consistently useful rather than occasionally brilliant, and the credits accumulated across 4 decades reflect that philosophy in practice. His appearance in Goodfellas as Tuffy, filmed around the same period as Sister Act, placed him inside one of the most celebrated crime films ever made without requiring him to carry a single scene alone. Law & Order became a recurring professional home across various iterations of that franchise through the years that followed, alongside steady appearances in major television productions. His personal life has stayed almost entirely outside the public record across the full span of his career, a privacy he has maintained with considerable consistency across an industry that tends to make such things genuinely difficult to sustain. Number 9, Ellen Albertini Dow as one of the choir nuns, whose scenes within the convent ensemble gave the musical sequences an authentic generational texture, and whose face most audiences would eventually connect to a completely different and considerably more surprising performance entirely. Around 78 years old during production, having been born in 1913, she arrived carrying a background in professional dance instruction that predated Sister Act by more than half a century. Her personal life included a long marriage that ended with her husband's passing before her career found its most widely seen moment. That moment came in 1998 when she appeared in The Wedding Singers and delivered a full rap performance of Rapper's Delight at a wedding reception, a scene so unexpected and so perfectly executed that it became one of the most talked-about film cameos of that entire decade. The distance between a habit-wearing choir nun in 1992 and a rapping grandmother in 1998 is considerable, and she covered it without breaking a sweat. Ellen Albertini Dow passed away on May 4, 2015, at 101 years old, having spent the better part of a century finding ways to surprise people. Number 10. Carmen Zapata as one of the choir nuns, whose position in the convent ensemble connected the film to a performer who had spent decades building something in the entertainment industry that extended well beyond any individual role she was hired to play. 64 years old during production, she had already established herself through television work, including Barney Miller and various film appearances before Sister Act came along. What ran alongside that screen career was the work she considered most essential. She co-founded the Bilingual Foundation of the Arts in Los Angeles, an organization dedicated to bringing Spanish-language theater to underserved communities, a cultural institution that represented one of the most meaningful contributions any performer from her generation made to the landscape outside their paid work. The Screen Actors Guild recognized her with a Lifetime Achievement Award that acknowledged decades of contribution, both on and off the stage. Her personal relationships were maintained largely outside the public conversation throughout her career. Carmen Zapata passed away on February 3, 2014, at 86 years old, with the Bilingual Foundation continuing to carry her legacy forward. Number 11. Pat Crawford Brown as one of the choir nuns, arriving with the practiced ease of a performer who had spent years finding the specific rhythm of characters who exist just outside the central storyline but make every scene feel more complete for being there. Around 62 during production, the role that eventually brought her to her widest audience came years later as Ida Greenberg across multiple seasons of Desperate Housewives, a character the show deployed to both comic and dramatic effect in ways that required an actress capable of handling both registers with equal confidence. She was married to director Barry Brown. A partnership built inside the entertainment world, she devoted her professional life to across more than 4 decades of consistent work, a shared industry connection that kept both of them embedded in the craft they had chosen across the full span of their careers together. Her body of work across television and stage reflected a performer who never treated a supporting role as less worthy of full commitment than a leading one. Pat Crawford Brown passed away on November 18, 2019, at 90 years old. Number 12. Prudence Wright Holmes as one of the choir nuns, a role she occupied with the quiet discipline that ensemble work at this level demands, contributing to the collective texture that made choir sequences feel genuinely inhabited rather than simply dressed and positioned. The specific craft required to function effectively within an ensemble of this size is one that gets discussed less often than the work happening at the center of the frame. But the warmth those convent scenes generate depends entirely on the performers filling the surrounding space with something real rather than decorative. She brought a stage background to the role that informed how she held herself within those sequences, and the naturalism she contributed to the group dynamic gave the more overtly comedic moments around her a believable world to exist inside. Her career across stage and screen moved through various productions before and after Sister Act, a body of supporting work that reflects the same understanding of ensemble craft she brought to the convent. Her personal life has stayed entirely out of the public record across the span of her career. Number 13. Whoopi Goldberg as Deloris, the brash, resourceful Las Vegas lounge singer who arrives at the convent with no intention of staying and leaves having changed everything about the place, a character so completely built around her specific energy that the film is genuinely difficult to imagine existing without her at its center. 36 years old during production, she is 70 today. The Oscar she had won 2 years earlier for Ghost in 1990 gave her a formal industry standing that matched what audiences already knew from The Color Purple and her stand-up work. And Sister Act confirmed she could carry a mainstream comedy with the same authority she brought to dramatic material. 3 marriages mark her personal history to Alvin Martin from 1973 to 1979, David Cleason from 1986 to 1988, and Lyle Trachtenberg from 1994 to 1995, and she has one daughter, Alexandria, from her first marriage. Her role as co-host on The View since 2007 has kept her in the daily public conversation in a completely different format from anything the film career required of her. And a 2022 controversy over comments she made about the Holocaust on that program generated significant backlash and a temporary suspension. The EGOT status she holds, one of the few performers to win Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony Awards, remains one of the most complete achievement records in entertainment history.